Sunday evening, we are doing module number 6. Last time we had covered standards. Today we are going to talk about something a little more interesting. So, let me share my screen. Here we go. We are going to talk about digital learning platforms. So, let me put my screen up. Here I go. And first of all, let's understand what are the topics we are going to cover today. So we are going to cover concepts of digital learning, platforms, evolution of platforms, a little bit of history, benefits of platforms, types of digital platforms, features of digital learning platforms, key parameters, software and services related to digital learning platforms, LMS, types of LMS, etc., etc. But all of this cannot be covered in one day. So we have broken down this module into two pieces. First of all, we will have today the key terms and concepts, platforms, evolution, benefits, and types of digital platforms. We'll pause and then next time we will be covering the rest of the topics. So I'm going to stop sharing this talk. We're just a few people. Tell me, what do you mean when I say the word digital learning platform? What comes to your mind? Anything? When I say digital learning platform, what comes to your mind?
Online learning.
Online learning. Uh, so how is okay, good point. Thank you. Uh, Online learning or digital learning, are they subsets of each other, or is online learning a superset of digital learning platform, or are they completely different?
I think online learning is subset of digital learning.
Online learning is a subset of digital learning. So digital learning, in a way, has evolved beyond our modes of teaching and modes of accessing learning materials. There's something called online learning that people nowadays use. So online learning loosely refers to any form which involves internet and does not involve um, people directly sitting in front of each other. Okay, that becomes online learning. E-learning hai, LMS learning hai. When we talk about a digital learning platform, we are primarily saying that how people access the learning materials. That is what determines the various variety of the learning platform. Why do we need a platform? Because we are not doing books anymore and reading materials of various kind of portals. This does provide a non-standardized learning experience. We spoke about standards last time, right? Standardized learning experience requires digital learning to be available to people in a way that is accessible, it's easy, it's intuitive, it's predictable, etc., etc. So the response to my question is e-learning is facilitated, or online learning is facilitated by various kinds of digital learning platforms. Now, what kind of digital learning platforms have you heard of? Can be any silly examples, and even if you say ki pata nahi kya hai, that's also all right. So, what all digital platforms have you heard about, especially at work? What are the ones that you use?
Zoom, Google Meet.
Sorry,
Zoom, Google Meet.
Zoom, Google Meet. These are meeting platforms. Learning platforms कौन सा use करते हो? What is the learning platform that you use? For example, Udemy is a learning platform. Would you agree?
Yes.
Udemy is a digital learning platform. वैसे ही, is there any other learning platform that your organization has, like an SAP or something else? And by the way, there isn't any right answer to this. It can be हमारे नहीं है ऑफिस में, कौन सी बड़ी बात? But I'm just asking in case you have heard about any specific digital learning platform.
So currently we are using Wallet in our organizations. Earlier, I think I have been also exposed to Skillport.
Okay. Have you, any of you been exposed to Cognos?
No, we are
I
working with.
No.
learn. Go ahead. Somebody was saying something.
I'm saying we are working with Oracle and in the previous organization Zoho. Those
Oracle
Zoho.
and Zoho. Great examples. Oracle and Zoho. Now, you would also notice that the various learning platforms comes with features like administration कर सकते हो, आप उसमें question bank upload कर सकते हो, आप questions roll out कर सकते हो. Some people, some of the platforms come with the facility. Sorry, what's wrong with me? Some platforms come with the facility to upload question banks, evaluate examinations. Some don't. So there are limited facilities available in some learning systems, and some have various kind of access levels, like enterprise, like corporate, like basic, like professional. There is also a tiered approach that digital learning platforms nowadays provide. ठीक है. Thank you for sharing all that. Now let's look at what we want to cover today, specifically the key terms. So we will take this session to large extent. I dummy down my sessions just for the benefit of people who have not experienced this before. So let's first understand the difference between digital learning, online learning, e-learning. Not necessarily the difference, but one of the things that I have recognized is sometimes people do not really know the difference between these terms, or they use them interchangeably. Digital learning is an umbrella term. It is the broadest term on the list that we are going to use here. Online learning is slightly narrower than digital learning, because digital learning can also mean that you have something downloaded and you're learning and you don't necessarily need to be online. Then e-learning is also known as virtual learning, which is, we also have to recognize that in e-learning, we put the distinction as nothing happens offline, everything happens online over the internet. Then there is distance learning, which all of you know is a pretty similar synonym for e-learning. Universities, etc., call their e-learning interventions, which last over a period of time, as distance learning. Then there is blended learning, which all of us know. It is a mixture of traditional learning, which is instructor led, and then there is e learning, which supplements the efforts of the trainer. Then there are other terms that get thrown at you: online course material, digital curriculum, e textbook. So, when we say a digital curriculum and online course material, one of the things that I've realized is people get very confused when online course material is referred. People consider everything comes under online course material. Whereas if you go to, let us say you go to a website, any website which has a certain course that is housed on the left hand panel or the right hand panel, or there would be a section where you will be able to expand the items that are to be taught, and they will open up into sub items, and they would be classified into various chapters. If you remember our standards conversation, it is a typical classic way of XAPI in action, where you do not need to go to a different place to be able to do your training. Everything opens up on one screen. So online course material doesn't mean that the digital curriculum is included in it. Digital curriculum in itself is a separate file that pretty much preserves the structure of the online course, so that when the user interacts with the LMS, the correct module can be popped on your screen. So it is important to also explain the difference between online course material and the curriculum, because curriculum pretty much keeps the learning content organized. So it is also stored or housed in a separate file in your learning management system. It's a mini tip for you to not get lost in all the jargon. Now let's look at digital learning platforms. Digital learning platforms provide a safe and productive learning environment. Now, what to qualify as a digital learning platform, there are some conditions that must be met. किसी को भी digital learning platform नहीं बुला सकते. Is YouTube a digital learning platform? Not really. It's an entertainment platform. You can learn from it. But for some platform to qualify as a digital learning platform, the following criteria must be met. Number one, it must be designed for use by trainer. Number two, it should have the capability and the competency to deliver interactive training sessions. Number three, multimedia gamification elements they should have the scope to be including all these elements to increase learner engagement. Next one, customized learning experience for each training, which means that we should be able to, in a digital learning platform, we should be able to customize the learning path for separate users. And last but not the least, performance and progress tracking report based on all this data we should have the possibility of extracting these reports from the system. Now, there are some examples that I've given from our good old Indian examples. Canva, there is Nearpod, then there is Macro Hill. All of these are different kind of digital learning platforms. Some are used in colleges, some are used in schools, some are even now used in universities. So these are some examples of digital learning platforms. Understand the evolution of learning platforms, we can look at this graph. Now, one of the things that I also want to call out here is that, Tina, you often show us a lot of history. The reason is that I believe that sometimes the interpretation of our future is hidden in the past. Also, the past keeps us humble. When you see how the learning used to happen in the older times, you would be, if today's generations, any child or any learner has a look or a sneak peek into how learning used to happen, how clunky it used to be once upon a time, they will be entertained. Some of them will even say, how did you even survive? So looking at the history of e-learning is to give you an idea about how far we have come, how the evolution has picked up pace in the last years, and also it keeps us humble as to where we began and where we are. Okay. So we'll briefly take a few, I would not take more than few minutes, but I would like you to have a look at how e-learning has evolved over time. Now, this graph is also there in your books. You don't need to write and scribble and do stuff. But having said that, I will leave this information on your screen for a few seconds. I'll take a sip of water and let you absorb the information that you have. So for those of you who are not in front of the screen, we are reading this graphic from left to right. And there are 9 stages of the evolution of learning platforms that are mentioned on the screen. Pronouncedly, I would say that the learning platforms have moved from organizing training in a structured, programmatic manner to now individual learning experience, which is highly personalized, which is basically iterative, and also bite-sized, which means that it is nudged. You send out various kinds of information, learning nuggets to people over various devices that is available to them in short bursts. These are called nuggets, chunks, etc., etc. We've spoken about chunking as to how chunking happens. So it's basically popularly known as micro learning, when small pieces of information is systematically pushed to learners for the overall holistic learning experience. Now, those of you who have finished reading the infographic, I'm going to briefly take you through left to right as to all the milestones of this evolution of learning platforms. So first of all, we are talking about training and certification. It used to be the most traditional, formal way of learning that used to happen. That moved into e-learning delivery because people realize not everybody can travel, so it saves time, it saves effort. So let's use the internet to deliver training content. Then eventually we realize, अरे हम सिर्फ पढ़ाई करा रहे हैं. People don't have enough hands-on experience. So when they go and try applying the knowledge on the job, often what happens is they fumble, they do mistakes, they cause irreparable damage, and then they're thrown back into training. It becomes a vicious cycle. So the blended learning model started becoming popular. Beyond that, the next milestone shows us informal 70-20-10 learning. And we had this brief conversation. I don't remember whether it was with Dispatch or somebody else, where we spoke about why 70-20-10 and blended learning are not the same things. Blended learning is a methodology. It's a system that allows you to mix in person, as in interaction with facilitator, along with offline, non online experiences together. 70-20-10 is more of a framework of learning where these numbers are determined and they're also not cast in stone. The 70 can become 55, 25, 35, etc., etc. The numbers are interchangeable as long as they're adding up to 100. So it is a framework which is a part of blended learning. So blended learning is the larger umbrella. 70-20-10 is a framework using which we facilitate learning for people. And we also say informal because in the 70-20-10, other than the 10, which happens in the classroom, which is directive, which is trainer engaging, curriculum, system wise, everything else involves a larger informal learning element. For example, how you learn from shadowing, how you learn by observing somebody else entirely depends upon your pace, your time, and the way you would like to learn. Similarly, the 70% that you are learning on the job, learning by doing, for some people it can be very short. For some people it can be longer, depending upon the complexity of the job, the competency of the person who is learning the job. So there isn't really a structure, like a training schedule is structured. इतने बजे से इतने बजे, इतने टाइम में ये टॉपिक्स कवर करेंगे, इतने टाइम में असाइनमेंट करेंगे, इतने टाइम में क्विज करेंगे, क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए इतना टाइम रखेंगे. That structure is missing, and that's why it is also known as a part of informal learning. So there's formal learning, then there's informal learning. So this one, the 70-20 framework, etc., became more and more popular as the next milestone when we moved away from, I won't say moved away, basically we decided to integrate different kind of frameworks to enhance the experience of blended learning. Then came the realization that training in itself as a standalone exercise doesn't really create the desired effect that is required. So instead of we just calling it training as a siloed concept, we started saying that learning and development also is a part of the training, the talent development framework. So moving away from siloed learning and development experiences, we moved to talent management, which required not only learning and development, but also enhancing other facets of employees to make sure that the talent is retained, attracted and retained in the organization. Next step, which is the number 6th milestone, is primarily making this even more popular in formal learning, which is social learning, mobile learning, user generated content, where people talk to each other, resolve problems, post it out there. And the trainer is not even involved. The only thing that requires to be done, and this I always mention with the word of caution, is while people might hash and solve a problem, it doesn't mean that it is the right solution. There has to be some amount of moderation to make sure that the solution that is being circulated is something which is the right solution, which will not create any negative, unwanted impact. The 7th milestone that you see is learning analytics. इससे पहले तक what was happening is people generally would take feedback on piece of paper. एक बंदा feedback चढ़ाता था. Feedback would typically be taken at level 1. Kirkpatrick hardly practice hota tha. And it would be a largely clunky exercise for somebody to upload the question papers, put in the scores, generate a mark sheet. And that common analytics that would be reported would be number of training hours, penetration into organization, pass fail percentage, compliance trainings, etc. Very basic analytics. But with time, social media, mobile learning, micro learning, and all of this, plus with the recognition that this is a part of talent development, came the idea of having advanced learning analytics. For example, if there is a topic like we did last time, the e-learning standards or something like this, which is requiring more time for people to comprehend, understand, use, assimilate, the trainer can get feedback that this is a more complicated topic which requires more and more attention. And hence, based on that, the learning analytics will show the amount of time spent on that page is much higher as compared to the other pages of the e-learning content. So you get a lot of feedback in addition to just scores and numbers and automation of administration. So that gave the trainers much needed relief. And sorry, they could move away from the whole idea of having to extensively spend precious time in doing the training administration. So now the next milestone is says learning engagement. उससे पहले तक आपको ट्रेनिंग में भेजा जा रहा है, आप जाओ ट्रेनिंग में बैठो, आपको ये पढ़ने के लिए भेजा है, प्लीज रीड इट, प्लीज लर्न इट, take the test, qualified, go back. Now what's happening is the generation is changing, the requirements of the time is changing. Unless and until we invest in our human resources, the ability and the ability and capability, I could use both the words, unless and until we enhance them, what happens is we miss out in the long run. As an organization, competitive advantage is lost. So it's important कि हम ये जो dance and dancing and singing and all this presentation we are doing, people are also engaged. They should be interested. They should have clarity about WIFM. What's in it for me? So then the concept was there, I would say, the importance of learner engagement largely increased as a part of this match. And then last but not the least is learning relationship and personal transformation, which means that I am invested in my learning. So one of the examples that recently somebody said was there is this employee who was largely complaining about the fact that people don't seem to give us any training opportunities. जब देखो तब काम कराते रहते हैं, work from home में बिठा रखा है, nobody gives us any. So she complained quite a few number of times. Now, one of the things that nowadays people are openly speaking up about is learning is not a one-way street. It is not only the responsibility of the organization to provide you learning opportunity. It is a two-way street where people have to be invested in their own learning. So now what is happening is the trainers are making sure that not only is the aspiration part taken care of employees, in addition to the technical part, they are also communicating about it, talking about it, and personalizing their learning journey so that they're engaged in the organization. Or else what happens is people get disengaged, they start looking for jobs, or they simply do not do the job well. And the only standard response is that हमारी कोई training तो होती नहीं है. So how does a trainer make sure that the learning path that he or she is carving for a group of people is personalized enough, engaging enough, fun enough, and of course, in tandem or in hand to hand with the business outcomes, that it becomes a personal transformation journey. So that is how the learning platforms have evolved. So all these features that were almost absent initially have now started showing up on various kind of learning platforms. Now you can also see the benefits of digital learning platforms. Most of you know it, but still, like I said, I will go through it so that in case somebody has not seen all of that quantified right in front of you, they can. Highly engaging multimedia learning experience. No more boring PDFs, line page पर पढ़े ही जा रहे हैं. Next किए ही जा रहे हैं. So you have highly engaging multimedia learning experience, like you have avatars, you have virtual scenarios, case studies, animations, really fun. Then there is personalized learning because I might not be knowing all the concepts of finance. Might be in a finance and accounting process, or I might not know UI UX principles for designing, whereas I'm in corporate communications. So depending upon your knowledge, your pre-survey, the software can decide if it's an adaptable, and we'll talk about digital learning platforms being adaptable, non-adaptable. If it's adaptable learning, then my learning module will begin at a certain point, which is beyond the learning experience of somebody who is fairly senior and understands the concepts. So mine will be way beyond their threshold. I will begin with basics and then I will progress. Based on the senior person who already knows the crux and the fundamentals is only going to build upon additional learning information, advanced knowledge. So that kind of customization is possible, which for a trainer becomes very difficult to be able to do that all in one go. Then he or she has to have different kind of levels defined for the training material. Then there is tracking and reporting, which is much more sophisticated and extensive in case of digital learning platforms. Last but not the least, there is a lot of simplification that gets introduced in training administration when digital learning platforms are used. So I've been ranting for quite some time. I'm cognizant of that. I'm going to stop the share and look for any questions, comments, anything anybody would like to share before I move forward. Any questions, clarifications, comments you would like to share?
Tina, that 70 20 10.
Yes.
So here, are we talking about 70% online learning or 70% ILT learning
70% on the job,
on the okay?
20% job shadowing, learning by doing, sorry, learning by observing, and is 10% is classroom. So this is a classroom. It can be an online classroom. It can be an in-person classroom. As long as there is a facilitator who is interacting and teaching you, that becomes your 70%. Sorry, your 10% interaction.
Okay. So on the job, shadow, and then the online or maybe a
शैडो की
classroom.
जगह कोचिंग भी हो सकता है, ऑब्जर्विंग भी हो सकता है, it can be a lab trip also. Interesting statistic is 70 doesn't have to be 70. That's the best
Mm,
part. मैंने शायद आप लोगों को लास्ट टाइम दिखाया था, नहीं दिखाया था. Let me bring up the slide. It's an interesting slide. When we say 70 20, अगर मिल जाता है तो sorry, 70 20 10 is not etched in stone. 70 can become 55. So if you can give me 1 minute, I'll
sure.
quickly see if I can pull out that module because I found it to be fun. Module number 4. इसी बैच को तो पढ़ाया था. Let's look at this. उसमें 70 20 10 हमने बात किया था, in which they have also given an alternate as to what it can be. Because nowadays, based on the recent learning data, people have actually said that, oh, the 70 20 10 number is flawed. We can actually have a different number composition. I'm looking for it. If I find it, it will be great. I think I found it. Okay, here I go. I'm going to present that one instead of this one. I'll just briefly discuss on this slide. So, like I said, last session that I conducted in that, there's this gentleman who asked me the question, ma'am, what is learning model maturity? So, one of the questions that is fascinating is learning module maturity. Sorry, learning model maturity, which means that the model says that this should happen, but over a period of time, it has become redundant and people do not relate to the exact percentages or details of that model. So the model matures. This is a great example for that. 70 20 10 practice. Experiential, applying learning on the job. Okay? Then social, which is coaching, mentoring, feedback, social learning, buddy system, etc. 70% आपके experiential है, social है आपका 20, and formal है आपका, which is classroom, program, courses, e-learning, simulation, etc. Now, what the pundits are saying is that this is not etched in stone. You can change your 70 to something else. So, what do you change it to? They realize that over the period of time, as a result of maturity of this model, the number which is more commonly observed in industry is 55 25 20. So instead of 70%, 55% is experiential learning. 25% instead of the 20%, 25% is basically social learning. And instead of the 10%, formal learning is actually 20%, where the facilitator spends the 20% of the time teaching you concepts, etc., etc. So even though we use the word 70 20 10 loosely, doesn't mean that you have to follow it like to the T. It can be varied. The numbers can be changed. Does it make sense?
So if we, I think, understand reverse in the reverse order. So let's say if you are actually picking up a guy, or maybe let's talk about a new hire or a new
Mm.
onboarding trainee.
Mm.
So the new hire trainee, like, are we trying to say that only 40 to 45% the person will be able to absorb with the help of that CRT
No, no, no,
presenting?
no, 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 no,
No,
no.
not
Okay.
that.
So, no, 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 no. So, 70-20-10 model is a teaching model. Okay. So,
Mhm.
when you are a learning expert, आपको एक्टिविटीज बनानी है so that people can learn and remember the content. Okay. So, you are making a learning plan. Learning plan में आप क्या डालोगे? Teaching. Concepts teaching. That should take up 20% और 10% of the time of the person. ये 10 को इन्होंने बोला कि हम चेंज करके 22 या 25% कर देंगे. So 20-25% will be coming into classrooms, doing an e-learning course, Udemy, this and that. That will be your learning activities. Next learning activity will be social learning or observing somebody do the job so that I can do the job. The new hire will have a buddy, or the person will interact with people in production. They will go through various kind of simulations. So in case you have like 100 learning hours, out of that 20% should be devoted to all these kind of activities. You can take lab trips in case there is a lab or a factory or a manufacturing unit, or the person can be a part of a project where people are discussing what went right and wrong with the project. So basically, it's observing, shadowing, learning. And then the rest of the activities should happen in a real production environment for people to learn. So, learning 100 hours has to be broken down into these three segments where people are able to interact and learn, and then they are ready to go into production, whatever job it is. Deepti Arora has put up her hand. Yes, Deepti.
Tina, just to add on this with the Jugal's question, can I cite an example? We recently
Sure,
designed an intervention
sure.
with the same framework, 3E, we call it as a framework, 70-20-10. So here what we did was we kept the focus of transfer of the knowledge in that 10%. So whatever knowledge transfer has to happen theoretically and all through experiential mode, but in the classroom training. Then we for this 20% is something that we had the special leadership connects where around across the company, the OPCOM members will come and share how did they grow to that leadership model, how did they
Mhm.
actually work, how did they, so sharing their insights comes in that 20, and 70% is something where we actually gave a partner in applied learning where any manager, we left it to the manager and the reports if they want to the same or another one, they become the partner in applied learning. We gave them one project for initial learning phase, and they will go back and apply this in their during their project. And after 20-25 days, they will come back and reflect on that particular project. What was, how did they implement it? What challenges they faced? What strategies they applied? How did the learning work forward? What business impact they had? What people impact they had? So this kind of entire process is something that we bought in this 70-20-10 framework.
Hmm. Thank you for the example. So I'm curious, Deepti ji, after this, when they come and share their observations, etc., is there an intervention, another training intervention, or is it
Yes.
just a sharing session and people can share their best practices and go back?
No, so this is a learning journey of 7 months with 7 modules
So intervention.
and
So, okay, I will stop
seven
you there. So
intervention.
what Deepti is talking about is an intervention-based model. What is a training model and an intervention-based model? Training models are a one impact and you're done. That means you go, you get an on new person, the person is onboarded, आपने उसको footprint, global footprint, PDF, ये वो दे दिया, PowerPoint दे दिया, सब कुछ दे दिया. Knowledge transfer, as she quoted, happens in the classroom. And then after that, you call leadership, you call subject matter experts, you take them for field trips, you take them to the factory, you show them how things happen, office trip, and all of that is learning by observing. So they're shadowing, they get a buddy, the buddy shows them how a day in their, in the job would look like. All of that comes under the 20%. Now, the 70% that ma'am is saying that you take a project, you go apply it on the job might not be applicable for a new onboarding example. For somebody who is new, 70% would look like you go and you meet your manager for the first time. Ideally, the trainer will facilitate that I am new And the manager will say, oh, wow, welcome. This is the gentleman. He's the senior most person of the team. He will help you. So this person gets gets assigned. He's the responsibility of your learning. Now, what you do is this person said, this is how our process works at work. This is your desk. This is how you will be assigned jobs. These are the few things you will do on a day-to-day basis. This is how the errors are calculated, etc., etc. Now, because you are new, somebody is going to progress and monitor your um, job every day. In addition to that, because you are new, you might not be sitting in production for the entire day. For example, let us take a very simple job. Somebody who responds to emails is on chat support. If you're supposed to be on chat support for 10 hours, initially when you're new, you might be given the opportunity to be only for 4 hours. Somebody will closely monitor the chat. Somebody will check what you're writing so that there are no tangible defects. But what is happening as an experience to the new hire is they are learning by doing. They're seeing what kind of mistakes happen. So when Tina was teaching me, she only gave me one example. The template looked different. The buttons were at different places because it was a training environment. This is the real environment. Also, Tina said that this is how, these are the few things that you must do, must not do. But unfortunately, fortunately, in operations, वो follow नहीं होता. कोई follow नहीं करता, ऐसे ही कर देते हैं. So it is like the rubber hits the road. And once the person who's been assigned your learning journey is confidence in you, they sign off saying that, yes, this person is now ready for full time work. That is when your actual job begins. Now, let's see what Dr. Deepti said. Dr. Deepti said that we have implemented a, a learning process or a project where it's a 7 month process. तो लोग सीखते हैं क्लास में आके, जाते हैं, उसको अप्लाई करते हैं, then they come back again to the classroom at regular intervals of time. They again gain knowledge, again they go back and they apply it. It is generally done in leadership development programs where there are middle to senior level people involved. It is called an intervention, training intervention, because it is not one size fits all. It is highly customized, it's expensive. People go back, stay at a learning center, they do the learning, they share, they do conclaves, this and that. And it is mostly associated with professional growth in an organization. So you can choose to have interventions of 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, or it can also run over 2 years. So what is the difference between an intervention and a training intervention and a training, which begins and ends? That's it. उसका कोई follow up नहीं है. But in an intervention, there is constant follow up. You go, you apply the skill, you face some challenges, or you get some aha moments, you come back, you share, and then more information is given to you. Dr. Deepti, I hope I summarized properly. That is exactly what you guys are
Correct,
doing, right?
correct.
हाँ,
So I was
हाँ.
just trying to, you spoke about training, so I just thought of bringing 70,
No, no,
20,
it's a
10
great example. It's a great
as well.
example. हमारा एक गोल्ड प्रोग्राम हुआ करता था जीई में. When I was a part of GE, I was part of the learning and leadership learning and development team. It's a Brandon Hall Award winner, GOLD, Global Operations Leadership Development Program. This is exactly how it used to happen. We
तो
used to
हमारा
get on.
कॉम्पेरी का एक हुआ था लीडरशिप डेवलपमेंट का
हाँ,
जो
हाँ.
ब्रैंडन हॉल विनर है
अच्छा,
and it is
congratulations.
pretty अच्छा. So yes, I was just trying to bring in
Yes,
within
a
that one
different
training.
perspective. Yes.
Yeah, and otherwise it is like within intervention. Both ways we can
Hmm.
use the framework.
You can use it both ways. Exactly. Exactly. Yes, Jugal, you put up your hand.
I just have a subset, or I would say a sub questions. What I was trying to
Yes.
understand. So,
Yes.
is there any methodology like through which we can understand that what should be the right amount of time frame for the on-job training? Why I'm asking, because let's say right now, I will take one of the example for one of the line of business. So where we have a
Hmm.
classroom training of 11 days, so precisely
हाँ जी.
88 hours of classroom training, which is a blended
Okay.
approach where
Okay.
we have given the e modules and LMS is also being used apart from the ILT sessions.
Hmm.
And then the person is actually going through the on job training of 5 days with the staggered
Hmm.
login hours. The example, like which you
Hmm.
were also trying to quote with the help of chat support. So let's say
Hmm.
if it's a voice support kind of a thing, the
Hmm.
person is actually doing not more than 24 or 30 hours of on job training
Got
during
it.
those 5 days.
Got it.
And then he is actually hitting the certification phase where again he is
Hmm.
actually giving around 12 hours or 14 hours kind of a login.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think we were actually deliberating on this particular piece, and then we wanted
Hmm.
to increase the on job training piece, because now what is
Hmm.
happening with this kind of a model, when the
Hmm.
person is actually spending 11 days in the classroom, then 5 days
Hmm.
in the on job training,
Hmm.
somehow he's not able to bring himself at par.
Hmm.
And then during the learning curve we see that
Hmm.
he is not able to cope up with the floor performances.
तो मॉडल चेंज कर दो, 11 के 11 दिन उनको क्लास में मत बिठाओ, इंटरस्पर्स कर दो. So
Mhm.
there's classroom training, there's application. Then there is again classroom training, then there's application. I mean, it's just a suggestion. You can do that. So to respond to your question, कि कितना time देना चाहिए? First of all, because it's a new organization or a new thing you are trying, you will have to do a bit of experimentation. So have 2 learners or 3 learners in different kind of models and see who is really working then. एक को उसी पे चलाओ जो 11 days and in per and job on the job activity पे चलाओ. अगले group of people को आप बोलो to intersperse your on the job along with the trainings, morning, evening, or we do 2 days of this, 2 days of that. Okay, so that you can immediately apply whatever you learn on the job and you learn better. That's the second operation set. And the third operation set is get a subject matter expert to not only deliver but also share live experiences as to what can go wrong along with your training, the classroom, and then make them go into application. See, there isn't really a number that we can put our finger on. कि इतना ही time होना चाहिए. The reason being the learning outcomes and the seniority, the kind of complexity of the job all will vary. Even for you, let us say that there is this different kind of job types that people have. सब में उतना ज़्यादा in the 70% वाला piece on the job will not be required, but in some it will be required. So the long answer to the short question is that you will have to experiment and find the sweet spot to reduce the learning curve to minimum and also reduce the that nesting period, gestation period, जिससे पहले people get productive 100%. Otherwise, what happens is वो drag हो जाता है learning का.
Correct. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Experiment करो 2-3 लोगों के साथ
Mm.
ना, different time का, and then you keep checking with them what is comfortable. Then you will hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, we are actually trying to do that. So we actually created certain SBRs,
Hmm.
a small part of that particular 11 days. So instead of doing 11 days, we actually
Hmm.
started doing 5 days, and then we are exposing them to the OGT kind of a thing. And
Hmm.
then gradually we are doing it. But
Hmm.
yeah, we can do that, and let's see how we
और
can.
reverse भी कर सकते हो. When people go to the job, go and practice things, let the
Okay,
trainer be the trainee a day and बोलो कि मुझे करना है, मुझे सिखाओ. That way, they also get to practice as to how to articulate what they've learned, and you can find gaps immediately.
okay, sure.
Reverse mentoring. Hmm.
Yep.
Thank you for the question. Let us go back to what we were saying. So what were you saying? We were talking about benefits of having digital platforms. And then we also want to talk about, one second, why is my screen stop moving? Yes, types of digital learning platforms. Now let's go into a little bit of a theory as to what are the various kinds of digital learning platforms. Now, some platforms give you the flexibility for ready to use content, and some also give you the flexibility to integrate your existing content along with the ready to use content and play around with it and make something as an amalgamation between the two. The second kind of category distinction comes from the fact whether the platform has adaptive capability or is a non-adaptive platform. इसका मतलब मैंने मोबाइल पे वो कोर्स करना शुरू किया, it saved my progress, and then when I go to my laptop, my progress will start from there. So it remembers user behavior. Now, how much of a user behavior does it remember actually defines how well or how adaptive the learning platform is. Now, the example that I was quoting. So, before I let you read so much of text on the screen, let me first talk about one of the things that I've seen is a distinguisher or a outstanding um, feature that many people look at when they start their learning process to reduce the burden on the learning and development team is the amount of adaptability you have. In my example, let us say that I know nothing about finance and I'm being put into a finance and accounting process. I have been put there because I have great attitude, I have great credentials, and also I show a lot of promise in getting things done. So I've been moved to this department, but मुझे ज़्यादा पता नहीं है finance के बारे में. But because of my attitude, superior attitude, I'll be able to learn. And then there is, let us say, I can see Ramesh on the screen. So let us say Ramesh. Ramesh is an expert in FNA. ठीक है, तो उसको भी उसी क्लास में डाला गया है where the training is happening for this department. Now, Ramesh definitely doesn't want to hear all the basics of finance and accounting, which Tina requires. Now, what an adaptive learning platform can do is it can do a pre-assessment and decide where is my learning baseline. Is my learning baseline is 6 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, I will be given an entry into the learning gateway at a point which is much lower than Ramesh's entry point. So I will be going through additional number of modules, additional number, much more detailed modules on the basics and the fundamentals as compared to Ramesh. Because Ramesh has the fundamentals in place, he will straight away enter the learning journey at his mid level, intermediate level. So he will be building his knowledge from there. So that way Ramesh doesn't get frustrated कि मुझे क्या पढ़ा रहे हैं, ये सब तो मुझे already आता है. Tina doesn't feel lost because, oh my God, ये क्या सब बता रहे हैं? I don't even understand anything. So this is the joy of having an adaptive e-learning platform. Many organizations nowadays, before onboarding, send a module 1 or 2 days before, saying that ये complete करके आना onboarding के लिए. What does it have? It is standard information. How old this organization is, when we got started, what is our global footprint, what is our revenue numbers, what is our gender diversity, all of that. It's given to you in a way that it's a mandatory training. It begins, everybody begins the induction session at a same baseline of learning. Otherwise, what happens is if it is not a mandatory module and people come unprepared, then the same information has to be repeated, and the people who have gone through the presentation, etc., are going to waste their time. So this is an adaptive platform's joy. I say joy because otherwise it becomes a training nightmare. कि कितने batches बनाओ, कितने लोगों से अलग-अलग training करो to be able to provide this value to them. So adaptability is one of the biggest differentiators for an organization to choose the platform. Now, one of the things that you also want to keep in mind is adaptive platforms. Expensive, they are not cheap, which means that some organizations who do not have highly complex jobs might not require it. But an advice is that in case you can have the budgets and you can have it, it's highly helpful. Now let's look at, sorry, I'm doing the bottom one first before I went to the one that is on the top. So what is there at the top? Ready to use content versus trainer created content. Now there are three kinds of platforms. When we talk about content, first, that provides ready to use content. तो लोग लेते हैं उन courses को plug and play कर लेते हैं, use करना शुरू कर देते हैं. The second platform is it allows trainer created content from scratch. So it will give me templates, etc., etc. मेरे पास PDF पड़ा हुआ है, existing training material पड़ा हुआ है, या तो वो migrate हो जाएगा or I use that material to create my own trainings. And the third one is it allows to amalgamate, pick and choose from ready-made content, and also allows trainers to create their own content. And in many cases, it also allows to amalgamate. Now, again, like I said, depending upon the complexity of the jobs, the requirement of the training, the size of the organization, and also the budgets available, you can choose which learning platform suit your need in the best possible manner. All right. Those are the few things we wanted to cover. So now I want to extensively talk about one of the things that is not there, and that is the components that you have to look at. It's covered in detail in the next session. What are the various components you have to be cognizant of or aware of before you choose a digital learning platform? Now, when you will start talking to vendors, they will give you all kinds of jargon. हमारे में ये भी है, वो भी है, Most of the words you will not be aware of. So you have to break down your requirements into very simple three buckets. One, cost. Second, usability. And three is scalability and volume. In these three categories, if you are able to write down and you are able to categorize the requirements of your learners, your choice of your learning management system becomes much more easy. So let me do a mini experiment here. If you had to digitize, and we will cover this in more detail when we do the next session, but I wanted to have this conversation. If you choose to digitize your learning and say, I'm going to migrate all my learnings into a digital learning platform, what is the, other than the budget, what are the two things that you will prioritize right away? Anyone wants to share? You can also write it on a piece of paper. It's a great exercise for you to have. What are the two things you want to prioritize right away if you had to choose a digital learning framework? Sorry, a platform. कौन सा चीज सबसे ज्यादा टाइम लेता है? Content creation, administration, these are some categories. Which one is
Content,
it? Sorry.
ideally content, deciding on how you want to go for the content type and then
Hmm.
development. So if it is
Developing it.
video and all SCOM
Hmm.
package, then
Hmm.
the script and everything in that case,
Exactly.
real-time
Exactly.
cases. So
Thank you.
that will be the first thing
Content
that
takes
right?
maximum time. Content takes maximum time. Or content design and content creation are two separate things. डिजाइन होगा कि कैसे इट विल बी स्प्रेड आउट, इंस्ट्रक्शनल डिजाइन मॉडल से, उसके बाद कंटेंट को भी तो क्रिएट करना है. So that's one priority. What will be the next priority other than content? Assessment, evaluation, ROI. There's a lot of topics to select from. Which one would you
There are many
select?
topics, but if it's already been decided, I'm sure all that scope has been discussed.
Hmm.
Budget, you're saying to keep it aside.
हाँ जी.
So I have to also see the mapping of my target groups
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Okay.
the flow, how you want that content to be flow with the digitization. How
Hmm.
do you grasp the attention?
Hmm.
Be it quizzes in between or
Hmm.
something else, gamification thing.
Hmm.
That I added to the Bhakti, added my point, evaluation.
Hmm. और क्या हो सकता है? SME availability.
Oh,
Because when
yes.
we are talking about content, most of the times we learners are very learned. मगर सारी learning हमारे पास नहीं होती है. We also have a huge dependence on subject matter experts to share their inputs. अब उन्होंने दे दिए 15-20 पावर पॉइंट्स, ये वो PDF दे दिए हम लोगों को. How will you put it together in a way that it makes sense to people? How will you map the knowledge? And that is where Deepti ji is saying that we are going to map our audience. What else has to be taken into consideration? एक हो गया assessment, एक हो गया evaluation, एक हो गया pre and post checking. So when you are writing all of this down, the reason why I would request you to do this exercise really, really well is when you are doing this exercise, there are things that you will look at as priorities when the features will be presented to you. So let us say Zoho. Somebody said Zoho. Then there were success factors that was talked about. Then there is iLearn. Then there is edX. They also provide their learning platforms. What is it that will solve my learning requirement at minimum cost? And you do not have to have all the features at one point in time. You can choose to have the features that are taking the maximum amount of time. So let us say that you are a volume organization जहाँ पे बहुत काम होता है. Volume is lot in terms of transactions, various kind of transactions. There are a lot of separate learning paths that need to be executed, both online as well as offline. In that situation, you might want to automate. Instead of content, you might want to automate the administration, the training evaluation, and basic module में upload कर दूंगी. Content ज़्यादा create करने की हमें ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. In that situation, when somebody comes up with a cheaper LMS alternative, which might not give you training content, too much of fancy flexibility, but it will still be robust enough for you, you can make that choice. As compared to that, in case you are, let us say, a scientific kind of an organization or let us say a research based organization, etc., in that situation, knowledge mapping is very important because when people leave, they leave with the content. So we need to have superior quality content, which is nicely organized. Administration हम कर लेंगे, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. Based on your learning outcomes, you should be looking at what solution I should be picking up to begin with. And the third aspect I spoke about is scalability. And what was the other term I used? There is something called scalability and expansion of the tool. So when I say scalability, it primarily means that is it scalable across regions, geographical regions. And when I say volumes, that means अगर अभी 500 लोग और ऐड कर दूं, will it be able to survive the learner traffic? So these are few things that can be valuable inputs for our next session, where we will talk about what are the things you must consider before you pick up a learning and development digital platform. So, if I may, with all of your permission, give you this task of making a list of various things you will require for making a choice of a digital learning platform. So, if you can make that list and come to the next classroom, I will be very, very grateful. We have some time. Do you want to clarify any questions, assignments, koi questions have, and I will give you some time back and you can enjoy a little bit more of your Sunday. Any questions, clarification? We can use half an hour.
No question.
आधा घंटा ज्यादा चाहिए संडे का.
या वैसे ही चले जाते बाकी घंटे आधा ही मिल रहा है.
Anyone? If not, I will give you back some time today. अगले वाले में compensate कर लेंगे थोड़ा time because it will be a little more discussion next time. Everybody's volumes, microphones are all on mute. Anybody wants to share anything, or else I will close the session? Yes, no, maybe?
No questions.
I-
Oh, okay, no questions. Thank you, Bhakti. Jugal, you were saying something?
No, I think right now people do not have questions.
बहुत ही बढ़िया. तो जब लास्ट पे फंसोगे तब आना मत सारे क्वेश्चंस लेके, क्योंकि तब टाइम होगा नहीं इसके बाद. ठीक है, मैं अभी भी बोल रही हूँ, केस स्टडीज पढ़ लो, एडिशनल मटेरियल देख लो, पीपीटी में से क्वेश्चन पूछ लो. इसके बाद टाइम नहीं होगा, सब व्हाट्सअप करना शुरू कर गए, मैम ये बता दो, मैम वो बता दो. मेक गुड यूज ऑफ टाइम. आई एम नॉट एडमोनिशिंग यू, यू गाइस आर ग्रोन अप्स. सॉरी.
हम लास्ट से एक ही क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे. मैम पेपर शेयर कर दो.
पेपर शेयर कर दो, हम पढ़ के आ जाते हैं. हाँ. चलो बढ़िया. Let me give you some time back. Thank you so much for the engagement, for the sharing. Please do your homework. अभी इतना टाइम है तो अभी बैठ जाओ, एक कप चाय लेके लिख लो what are the few things you would like to consider before you choose an LMS, so that next Sunday you don't have to rethink कि क्या बोला था करने के लिए. I will see you next Sunday. I hope that you learned something today. If not, I do hope that you had a good time. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
थैंक यू. हैप्पी वीकेंड.
Thank
Happy
you.
weekend.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
ma'am.